Today I saw a group of guys walking down the street. One of them tripped and fell. Another one yelled sniper and they all dived for cover. Reddit. What embarrassing situations turned awesome have you witnessed? I was at a high school assembly one time, and they called this one kid down from the very top of the bleachers. About halfway down he trips and rolls all the way down to gym floor, where he does a somersault, stands up, and throws his hands in the air. The whole crowd went nuts over it. Willy Wonka school days. At a restaurant I saw this family at a table. There was a mum, dad and baby. The dad took a sip of his beer. He began to choke and puked onto the table. He switched seats with the baby before the waitress came over and began comforting the baby as if it was the one that was sick. The waitress's face looking at the massive pile of puke in the little baby that supposedly done it was priceless. Man 1, woman 0, baby -1. In a high school track and field meet in the 100-meter hurdles, this one runner was running it flawlessly. He didn't knock down a single hurdle, but on the last one, his foot was caught on the hurdle and it looked like he was about to face plant on the track, but instead of face planting, he tucked his head in and did a shoulder roll and came out running and still managed to place third in the meet. Replace the last hurdle with the first and you've got me at my high school track meet. At a friend's party, we were playing video games on a nice flat panel TV on a rather flimsy table. In the middle of our game, the table gave way and the TV went crashing, screen first to the ground, silencing the entire room of 30+ people. I said the first thing which came to mind, "It's okay." I paused it. Definitely broke the tension. The TV was also fine. During winter time, the stairs at my high school could get a tad slippery. Saw this upperclassman one day step on a wet stair and his foot slipped forward. He went to step on the next stair and it did the same. So this kid's feet are swinging wildly as he's sliding, falling down the stairs. He starts going hey hop ho hey hop and crosses his arms like he's doing that Russian dance. Kid ended up eating it and dropping his books at the bottom of the stairs, but it was still made much more awesome by how he handled it. Awesome commitment to the bit. Kind of the opposite for me. An awesome moment made embarrassing by my friends. I saw someone getting mugged, went to their aid and subdued the mugger, but also ended up being stabbed and breaking my knee. My friends convinced everyone I was in some sort of a tragic cake baking accident, where I hit my knee on the oven door and then fell on a knife. No one believed the truth. This actually reminded me of a not so awesome thing I witnessed. I was working in a Best Buy in the home theater department. We had a huge, loud Bose system that we allowed customers to play with and a selection of about 10-15 Blu-rays. I was cashing out a 20-something soldier. I worked next to an army base, who was buying an HDMI cord when someone had put in the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan and had it blasted at almost top volume. The guy's eyes shot as wide as I've ever seen anyone's go before and he dropped and rolled behind my counter. He was clutching the cord box to his chest like a rifle and was shaking horribly. I ended up putting my hand on his shoulder and talking to him, telling him it was just the booze, but it took about a minute for him to come to. Really sad to witness that. Yeah, I have a friend who did a couple tours. He has occasional flashbacks, and fireworks are especially bad. Like not seeing what's actually there bad. It's a little scary trying to calm down a huge muscular guy who's panicking at something no one else can see. Just this morning I was filming a speech with an England Paralympic basketball player. I got on my knees in front of him to get a shot looking up at him. We both saw this lady look at me in disgust as if I was talking down at him by being on the floor. He smirked and went, "It's always better when they're on their knees." I was walking with a few friends about a month ago and one of them was chatting up a girl walking with us. As he was walking he walked into a pole, so me and the two others start kicking and punching the pole, similar to a certain YouTube video I watched. We were walking down the street when my sister's boyfriend somehow stumbled off the pavement and tripped over. Instead of actually going over, he maintained his stumble forward motion right through the doorway of the shop we were walking past and emerged seconds later with a newspaper under his arm, as if he'd meant to do that all along. Another time, we went to a club which was down in the basement of a bar, and as I stood on the top step, I slipped and bounced on my ass all the way to the bottom step, at which point my momentum brought me back to my feet in one fluid motion. and I just strode off, again as if I'd meant to do it all along. Similar to your second story, I was in a pub with a pint in my hand and slipped down 4 or 5 steps separating 2 sections of the pub. The moment I landed on my ass, my phone started ringing, and I got it out of my pocket and answered it. My friends all thought I'd intentionally sat down to talk, in the swishest possible fashion. I was walking with a group of friends years ago and one of them tried to push a swinging door open but it was locked. It was the middle of the day in the student union and one of the other guys jumps in and steps in between the guy and the door like he is breaking up a fight. He talks them both down and it was hilarious. Haha, that's brilliant. Definitely going to use that sometime. Sounds similar to a game called Mr. President. At any random time a member of the group will stop and press a finger to their head as if intently listening to an earbud. The rest of the group follows suit until the last person, who is now the president. Everyone else then shouts "Get down Mr. President" and tackles them. We played this game at my high school, starting out as a joke a month before we graduated. Within a week it was banned. I ended up giving the speech to my graduating class, and had my finger pressed against my ear for the second half of the speech. By the end of the speech, there was a sea of guys with their finger over their ear and a bunch of POF staff staring at me. There was an autistic kid at my middle school who would sometimes get overwhelmed by excess noise, and one time in the middle of a class discussion he yelled out "Stop" quite loud, and there was this awkward pause for a second. But before anyone could react, another guy stood up and said "Hammer time," and made the situation not nearly as awkward. Reminds of the time I was in my Calculus 2 class when the professor asked a really awkward and quiet Chinese guy to solve the problem on the board. The kid walked up to the board and just stared at it, not sure what to do. The class was silent, until another Asian stood up and said, "Don't dishonor our family." Even the professor couldn't hold back. Once during the Christmas holidays I was waiting in a long line for a cashier at Bath and Body Works, so I could pay for my purchase of overpriced crap that I so love. In front of me was a harried mother with 3 adorable but spirited young children. The little boy was smitten with the ceramic snowman with top hat soap dispenser, so of course he had to touch it, and of course he sent it smashing to the floor. The whole busy store fell silent, and the kid was obviously ready to bust out crying. So I kindly reassured him, "Don't you cry, he'll be back again someday." The kid didn't get the Frosty reference but the adults did, including the kid's mom who went from pee to laughter, and that's how I saved the life of a little boy. I like your narrative. You sound like you have a calm voice. Story from my boyfriend. When I was younger, maybe 8 years old, we had my parents' friends over for dinner. My mom had just redone the dining room a couple weeks before and was excited to show it off. All of us are sitting around the table, including my 2 brothers, the youngest being 5 years old. Mr. I forget his name, took the salad dressing and gave it a good shake before putting it on his salad. Unfortunately the top wasn't screwed on and the salad dressing went everywhere, all over the new expensive wallpaper, on the newly painted ceiling, on the table, on us. It was silent for a good 15 seconds before my 5-year-old little brother deadpanned, "No one hand him the ketchup." I was at my local grocery store, shopping with my dad. We were buying party stuff. It was someone's birthday in the family, just some snacks and drink mixes and stuff. We get to the checkout, and the bag boy is an autistic kid from my high school. Nicest guy ever. I'm chatting with him while he's bagging everything, and when he picks up a bag of lemons, the plastic seam of the bag rips and lemons tumble everywhere. He snatches them up, trying to shove them back in the bag, while I pick up the ones on the ground. When I stand back up, he's looking at me with an armful of a dozen or so lemons and a ripped bag in his hand, and exclaims, "Why can't I hold all these lemons?" Went right over the cashier and my dad's head, but I laughed my butt off. We played this kind of game at school as well. However, we had a few different variations. Sniper, shout sniper, and rugby tackle your mate. Poison, shout it's poisoned, just as they go to take a bite out of something, then be slap it from them. Bomb, grab their bag, and shout it's a bomb, then chuck it as far as you can and hit the deck. Knife, wait till they are about to get hugged and go she's got a knife, then intercept the hug. This game should be renamed Ways to Get Arrested in an Airport. I've written this elsewhere, but it was awesome. I was in my university dining hall during lunch, so the place was packed. A kid by the soda fountain dropped a glass and the place went silent as everyone turned and looked at him. Without missing a beat, he threw up his hands and yelled Mazel Tov. Cheers, laughter, and applause all around. I now have a go-to phrase if I ever break something. Every time I hear a dish break at a restaurant, I have to yell "Opa." My family hates me for it. My kids fall down quite often. They are toddlers, so I usually scream "Man down, medic," then proceed to do CPR on them in the most embarrassing overacting way I can. Or I shout to my partner I need a bone saw, stat. Or sometimes I pretend to take their pulse. Can't find it, then I mime the heart start stop paddles and shout "Everyone clear, BZZZT." This is followed by lifting them up by one foot and asking people they go this way up, right? Hope those suggestions help. At the unit here in featuring Hood, our first sergeant is really big on having the floors waxed. The only problem with this is desert boots and slick tile floors do not match at all. One of the new specialists walked in, slipped, almost fell, recovered, almost fell again, recovered into a perfect 360 Michael Jackson spin, and wound up leaning up with his back against the wall. He looked straight at us, touched his hand to the brim of his cover, and walked away. Dive. Back in high school there was a girl reading through a magazine and walking with her friends down a hallway. They were rapidly approaching a set of double doors, propped open, but there was a dividing beam in the hallway where the door met when closed. Well, you know where this is headed. The girl's friends see it and adjust their course accordingly. The girl with her face in the magazine doesn't. Bam, head first, full unaware mode, blood, tears, the works. One of the girls looks at the pole and, without a moment's hesitation, says "We bumped heads, okay." The bleeding girl looked up, confused. Her friend then grabs the beam and bashes her head into it. More blood and crying. They stumble to the nurse's office, claiming they bumped heads. Homies. That girl was bro as frick. Once a boy in my class who I knew liked me wanted to talk to me. He was yelling at me from across the parking lot to get my attention and started running over to me. I was standing on a low curb he didn't see and he tripped hard flat on his face 4 feet in front of me. In an attempt to cover up the fall, he came up from the fall in a push-up and proceeded to do 3 more awkward push-ups before he stood up, looked at me, then walked away. I'd like to think this came off as awesome to you, the intended audience. Exact same situation as OP described, except it was with my friends and someone yelled "Hide the body," but in a funny voice like "Hide the booty." The second that was shouted, 2 of the lads grabbed the guy who tripped over by his arms and legs and began running down the road. The mental image from this made me laugh out loud. Thank you for making my morning. I used to work with a man, we'll just call him M. Schlosser for anonymity's sake. No, that's no good, Mark S. So Mark and I used to work for a specialty construction company and we would travel around the US, from job to job, hiring local help at each job. We were in Indianapolis and had just hired 3 or 4 locals to help us unload the truck and get the job started. Now, a little backstory is required. Mark is in his late 50s and for all outward appearances is the whitest guy you'll meet. He's from the upper Midwest, has a very pale complexion and white hair, and dresses like the educated carpenter that he is. Not a hick by any means, just really white. But Mark has lived anything but a white bread life, and is still one of the funnest guys I've ever hung out with. Also, his ex-wife is a black woman, which makes his son half black, and Mark feels right at home in any company. So back to Indianapolis. We've hired 4 locals from a labor provider and they all turn out to be young black males. We've unloaded the truck, and the locals are in the other room shaking out our materials while Mark and I take inventory. The locals weren't dragging their feet, but there wasn't a lot of pep in their step either, and why should there be? I'm sure the labor provider was giving them minimum wage. So as Mark and I walk back into their room, Mark claps his hands and exclaims, "Come on boys, how about singing some of those Negro spirituals?" Time stopped for a moment, and then Mark finished, you know, like Camptown ladies. Another half a beat, and then gut-busting laughter all around. Man, he fricking lucked out that they knew Blazing Saddles. I. Get no kick, from Champagnat. My friend and I always turn bad boring dance floors into awesome limbo parties by holding one of our hands out in front while the other goes under it. A loud limbo usually helps too. Normally within minutes you've a queue of people wanting to find out how low they can go. Similar one. A friend of mine accidentally tripped over a standing person. Another friend of mine ran towards the standing stranger and showed him his travel pass, red plastic in Madrid, pretending that it was a soccer red card. I was walking in the city when I saw a little boy walking with his, who I assumed to be, brother. The boy was clearly autistic. Next thing I know, the boy wrenches free from his brother's grip and starts dancing in the middle of the street. The brother instinctively chases after him, but instead of rescuing him, began dancing alongside him. Then more people joined, and more, until it was essentially a flash mob in the middle of a busy street. It was fun until the police came and told us to move. I can imagine his brother's mind. Walking along, I want to dance. In my high school government class senior year, I was infamous for falling asleep in class. The dude's voice was monotone and the material was boring, so could you blame me? Anyways, one day I passed out so hard that the teacher had everyone leave the room while I was still sleeping. I awoke to the bell which signaled the end of the period and was groggy and very confused as to why I was in a classroom all alone. As I looked around, I began to notice that my whole class was outside the glass door watching my reaction. And to make matters even funnier, as I tried to stand up and walk out, my right leg had fallen so badly asleep that I had to limp out of the classroom. I suppose it's not really an embarrassing situation per se, but I think it's still awesome enough to warrant posting. Back when I was in high school, we ran out of tissues in our English class. It was the middle of winter, so a few people had colds. One student went up to the front to grab a tissue, and when they realized there were none left, asked the teacher if she could get some. She replied, "Wait a few minutes, I'm just doing a couple things now." Completely spontaneously, everyone in the class starts snuffling their nose loudly and she finally shouts, all right, I'll go grab some tissues," and everyone just busts butt laughing. In probably 1994 to 1995, I was in 4th grade. In the middle of class and my watch alarm went off while we were silent reading. The teacher shot me a mean glare and I just yelled, "We're all gonna blow." The class erupted in laughter and so did the teacher. These days SWAT would have swooped in and took me away. It was a dark, drunken night and I was on for a Christmas party with all the guys from work. We were out in the smoking area. We practically took it over. We were a few pints in at this stage and I go to sit down after going into the bar for another pint when one of the lads pulls the chair from behind me and I land straight on my butt and knock my head off the chair. The place was completely silent for a few seconds until an elderly gentleman off in the corner yelled, "HA, on your butt." The whole smoking room erupted into laughter. About a decade ago, I was drinking at a bar with some friends and one of them kept teasing me about something. Can't remember what exactly, and he was really getting on my nerves. He said something and I finally had it. I was overflowed with anger, turned to him enraged. My immediate impulse was to either punch him in the face, tackle him, or throw my drink at him. I stepped towards him with my fist clenched and my beer glass ready to be thrown at him. Immediately though, my sense of reasoning kicked in and made me realize I was overreacting. But it was too late. The impulse was already underway. I fought the impulse as hard as I could, but it was too strong and I was deranged already. In that split second my brain decided to take over, and I guess its way of rechannelizing the impulse was to stop me on my tracks, make me stick my finger in my beer, and flick beer droplets on his face. I have no idea. He makes fun of this to this day. My friend once sprained his neck, so he was unable to walk properly in school. To show our support, 3 of us joined him. All we had to do all day at school, imitate him, including his painful expressions. One of my best memories of 9th grade. My girlfriend recently sprained her ankle and had a limp. I would imitate her for fun in public and also so that she wouldn't be so embarrassed. Our chemistry teacher once wanted to show us a magic trick with some chemicals and a Bunsen burner. Instead of successfully demonstrate the trick, he lit the roof. Effectively, the roof was on fire. A friend of me yelled, "He's a warlock." I yelled, "Burn him." One of my college buddies invented this system to help the old zipper down in public situation. If he noticed your fly was open, he would go to the opposite side of the room, put his hands up in the air and loudly state, "Hey everybody, look at me." The room would all turn to face him, but he would make direct eye contact with the guy with the down zipper. So, if you heard him do this and you were his friend, you'd look at his face to see if he was looking back at you. And if he was, you had the opportunity to zip up while everyone was turned the other direction and not paying any attention to you at all. We used to do this in football wrestling in high school when someone would trip while running suicides. It was good fun. A few years ago I was sledding with some family down a fairly large hill with some thorny bushes at the bottom. You would normally miss them if you were far enough over, but being the dumbass I am, I decided to go down slightly closer to the bushes. I slid down and was going pretty smoothly when I suddenly curved straight towards the bushes. Right when I braced for pointy, coat-ripping impact, I hit a rock hidden under the snow and sailed right over the bushes into a perfect 360 degrees on the other side. Only one person saw it. TLDR. Went sledding. Was a dumbass. Avoided certain death at the hands of plants. I have one that happened to me, actually. I was at a cross-country meet a couple of years ago as a coach, and my job was to give the team their times after the 1 mile mark. In order to get my watch synchronized properly, I had to watch the start, then run about a quarter mile to get a good spot to yell times to the guys on the team. So the gun goes off, and I start running. This is on a relatively uneven grassy field, and I'm mostly concentrating on getting to my place as fast as possible. I wasn't really looking where I was going, and I stepped in a hole. That's a recipe for disaster. I could have broken an ankle or torn up my knee or something. Instead, I somehow had the reflexive instinct to do a forward roll while basically running full speed, and completed the roll by popping back up and continuing at basically the same pace. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. While mountain biking, a bunch of my friends are riding to the start point. Couple of them doing little hops and skids. One of them manages to completely lose control of the bike, flies over the handlebars, does 2 full rolls coming out into a kneel while pretending to air guitar a solo, complete with sound effects. A few years ago I saw the guy at my university save himself from embarrassment pretty smoothly. He was walking down a 10-step set of stairs, and when he was about 5 steps from the bottom he tripped and rolled down to the bottom. It was a busy time of day so quite a few people saw him do it. He stood up, brushed himself off, and said, "What is everybody staring at? Quick thinking, mother sucker." That pun feels like it wouldn't have been nearly as successful when said aloud. I was at a bar once. The only outdoor area was very narrow and small. It was very crowded. Think scowling sardines, hipsters. But this one girl, every time she had to cross through would raise her arm and shout, "For Sparta." Everyone parted ways. She came back later, quiet and smiling, when another girl piped, "Sparta." Another man, "Sparta." Suddenly the entire area was asking her, "Sparta? Sparta." She grinned and shouted, "Spartans." Everyone cheered. TLDR. In a grumpy crowded outdoor area in a bar, a girl made everyone smile by shouting, "Spartans." I was riding the campus commuter bus to work at the university from a building off campus, and a whole bunch of administrators got on at the same time. Clearly there was some event or meeting on central campus they had to get to. Problem was, by the next stop the bus was completely filled. Most of us in suits and the like just crammed together awkwardly. We approached a third stop just packed with students standing there with their massive backpacks. The bus got quiet and it felt even more awkward. I could tell that other staff felt like I did. Guilty for crowding out students who were clearly heading to class. The bus slowed as it approached the stop, to our incredulity, because no way could anyone else board. The bus driver seemed to realize this and suddenly gunned it, leaving a bunch of glaring students at the stop. Someone standing in the middle of the bus very quietly said, "Psych." The bus was quiet enough that we all heard, and it was the release we all needed. We roared with laughter. I am certain the students at the stop heard us, which makes it terrible, but I still remember the instant unity we all felt and how awesome it was. The rest of the ride was jovial and chatty, and the bus driver blew through all the other stops until we got to campus. playing basketball and a friend of mine was failing miserably. The other team began paying him out after he couldn't get a single shot in all game. After a particularly terrible attempt at a layup, he grabbed the ball in frustration and booted the ball as hard as he could. Everyone was laughing at his anger until suddenly, the ball dropped from sky high and landed swish through the ring 4 whole courts away. Everyone amazed stopped laughing and began cheering. Nobody teased him for the rest of the game and he didn't need to feel embarrassed. He was now the man of the hour. Nothing has ever not happened more than this has. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.